The morning sun rose slowly over the wheat fields of Seven, painting everything in soft gold. Walked along the dirt path with a basket in his hand, his eyes searching the ground for the herbs his mother needed. He was 17 years old, tall for his age, with messy black hair and kind eyes that always seemed to notice when someone needed help. His mother ran the only medical clinic in their small village. She was a quiet woman with gentle hands and a soft voice. The villagers loved her because she never turned anyone away, even when they could not pay. Had grown up watching her heal broken bones, cure fevers, and comfort crying children. He wanted to be like her someday. Their village sat at the edge of civilization, far from the busy cities and spaceports that connected this planet to the rest of the galaxy. Most people here were farmers who grew wheat and vegetables. They lived simple lives and asked for nothing more than good harvests and peaceful days. Near the village stood an ancient forest that stretched for many kilometers. The old people said strange things happened there. They spoke of lights that moved between the trees at night, sounds that had no source, and shadows that did not belong to anything. Most villagers avoided the forest after dark. Did not believe in such stories. He had explored those woods since childhood and never saw anything strange. To him, the forest was just trees and animals and the smell of earth after rain. Today he walked deeper than usual, searching for a rare flower his mother needed. The morning light filtered through the leaves above, creating patterns on the ground. Birds sang their songs. Everything seemed peaceful and ordinary. Then he saw it. Something metallic reflected the sunlight ahead, stopped walking. His heart began to beat faster. He pushed through the bushes carefully and found himself staring at a crashed escape pod. The pod was small, barely large enough for one person. Its surface was burned and cracked from entering the atmosphere too fast. Smoke still rose from its damaged engine. Whatever this thing was, it had fallen from the sky recently. Approached slowly. He had seen escape pods in school but never in real life. They were used when larger ships faced emergencies. Someone had been desperate enough to use this one. He found the emergency release and pulled it. The pod door hissed open. Inside, lying unconscious on the padded seat, was a girl. She was not human. Her skin was pale lavender, smooth like flower petals. Her hair was silver and long, spread around her face like water. Her features were delicate, almost too perfect, with high cheekbones and a small nose. She wore a torn dress that might have been beautiful once but was now burned and dirty. Recognized her species from his studies. She was from one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They were proud and powerful. They ruled over dozens of planets and considered most other species beneath them. Humans especially were seen as young and primitive in their eyes. What was it doing here, crashed in the forest of a farming planet? He noticed blood on her legs. Looking closer, he saw the damage was severe. Both legs were broken badly, the bones twisted in wrong directions. She must have been injured during the crash or perhaps before it. The girl's breathing was shallow but steady. She was alive, but she needed help immediately. Did not think about politics or species or whether helping her might cause trouble. He saw someone hurt and alone, and that was enough. He carefully lifted her from the pod, surprised by how light she was. Her head fell against his shoulder, her silver hair brushing his arm. He carried her through the forest, moving as quickly as he could without causing more damage to her legs. The walk back to the village took almost an hour. His arms burned from the effort, but he did not stop. When he finally reached home, his mother was treating an old farmer's cough. She looked up when entered carrying the alien girl, and something strange happened to her face. For just a moment, her expression changed into something had never seen before. It was like recognition mixed with fear mixed with something else he could not name. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual calm professionalism. "Put her on the bed in the back room," said quietly, gently. Obeyed. He laid the girl down on clean white sheets, stepping back to give his mother space to work. Examined the injuries with practiced hands, her face revealing nothing. "Her legs are badly broken," she said finally. "I can stabilize them, but bones heal differently than ours. She needs specialized treatment I cannot provide here." "Will she die?" asked. His mother shook her head. "No, but she may never walk properly again without better care." For the next 3 days, the girl remained unconscious, set her bones as best she could and wrapped them in healing bandages, helped whenever he could, bringing water and medicine, changing the sheets when needed. He found himself sitting beside her bed often, watching her sleep. He wondered who she was, where she came from, why she was alone. They were supposed to be powerful and wealthy. Why would one of their young crash on a planet like this with no one coming to find her? On the third night, she opened her eyes. They were purple, deep and dark like the sky just after sunset. She looked around the room in confusion, then saw sitting in the chair beside her. Fear flashed across her face. She tried to move, to escape, but pain from her legs stopped her. "It is okay," said quickly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You are safe. You crashed in the forest and I found you. My mother is a healer. She fixed your legs." The girl stared at him for a long moment. Her eyes moved over his face, his clothes, the simple room around them. Slowly, the fear in her expression faded into something like confusion. "Human," she said. Her voice was soft and musical like wind through bells. "You are human." "Yes, my name is. What is yours?" She hesitated, as if deciding whether to trust him with even that small piece of herself. Finally, she spoke. "Lyra, my name is Lyra." "Hello, Lyra, are you hungry? My mother made soup." Something changed in Lyra's eyes then. Perhaps it was surprise that this human boy was offering her food instead of asking questions. Perhaps it was simply exhaustion breaking through her walls. Whatever the reason, she nodded slowly, smiled and went to get the soup. Behind him, Lyra watched him go with an expression she did not quite understand herself. She had been taught all her life that humans were lesser beings, primitive creatures who had only recently crawled out of their single planet to touch the stars. But this primitive creature had found her broken in the forest. He had carried her in his arms. He had brought her to safety and asked for nothing in return. In the other room, stood by the window, staring at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Her hand touched the hidden pendant beneath her shirt, feeling its familiar weight. She had worked so hard to leave her old life behind, to give her son a chance at something different. Now the galaxy had found them anyway. She knew who Lyra was. She knew what the girl's presence here meant. And she knew that very soon, very dangerous people would come looking. But for now, she let bring soup to the alien girl. She let him show kindness without knowing the storm that kindness would bring. Because maybe, she thought, maybe that kindness was exactly what the universe needed right now. Even if it burned everything down around them. 3 weeks passed since Lyra opened her eyes. Her legs were healing, but the process was painfully slow. Bones needed special medicine that did not exist on Seven. The nearest medical station with proper supplies was on another planet entirely, and transport there cost more money than's family would earn in 50 years. So Lyra stayed in the small room with white walls and simple furniture. She could not walk. She could barely move without pain shooting through her body. For someone who had spent her life surrounded by luxury and servants, this helplessness was a new kind of torture. But refused to let her become a prisoner. Every morning he came to her room with a smile on his face. He would help her sit up, then turn around and lower himself to her level. "Get on," he would say. "I want to show you something." The first time he said this, Lyra thought he was joking. Did not ride on the backs of other beings. The very idea was beneath her dignity. She was the daughter of a high arbiter, raised in palaces of crystal and light. She had servants who existed only to carry her belongings. Now this human boy wanted to carry her like a sack of grain. No, she said firmly. Just shrugged. Okay, then you can look at these walls all day, your choice. He left to do his morning work. Lyra spent the day staring at the sailing, her pride keeping her company. By evening, she was so bored she wanted to scream. The next morning, when made the same offer, she hesitated only a moment before wrapping her arms around his neck. He lifted her easily, hooking his arms under her knees to support her damaged legs. Then he carried her outside into the morning light. The village was small but alive with activity. Farmers walked to their fields with tools over their shoulders. Children ran between the houses, playing games and laughing. Old women sat on porches, shelling beans and exchanging gossip. The smell of fresh bread drifted from a nearby kitchen. Walked through it all with Lyra on his back, nodding and smiling at everyone he passed. People stared at the alien girl with curiosity but not hostility. A few even waved. That is Grandmother Park, said, pointing to an ancient woman selling food from a cart. She makes the best rice cakes on the entire planet. I will buy you some later. Lyra did not know what to say. On her home world, servants moved in silence. They existed in the background, never speaking unless spoken to. But here, everyone talked to everyone. The baker asked about the farmer's sick cow. The children begged their teacher for extra play time. Even the dogs seemed to have opinions they needed to share. It was chaotic and loud, and completely unlike anything Lyra had ever experienced. Carried her to the wheat fields and showed her how the golden stalks swayed in the wind like waves on an ocean. He took her to the river where young people swam and splashed each other. He brought her to the hill overlooking the village where they could watch the sunset paint the sky in colors she had no names for. Every day, he found something new to show her. Every day, he lifted her onto his back without complaint, even though she knew his arms must ache from the effort. Why do you do this? Lyra asked one evening as they sat on the hill. The sun was setting, turning everything orange and red. I have nothing to give you. My people would never do the same for yours. Considered the question while chewing on a piece of grass. I guess because you needed help, and helping feels good. Is there supposed to be another reason? Lyra had no answer for that. In her world, everything was exchange. You gave something to get something. Power, money, influence, these were the currencies that mattered. Kindness for its own sake was a concept so foreign she could barely understand it. Your species confuses me, she admitted. Laughed, we confuse ourselves sometimes. As days turned to weeks, Lyra began to see things she had been blind to before. She watched her mother treat a farmer who could only pay with vegetables. She saw neighbors bring food to a family whose home had burned down. She witnessed the entire village work together to fix an old man's roof before the rain season arrived. These people had almost nothing compared to the wealth of the Imperium. They lived in simple homes, wore simple clothes, ate simple food, and yet they shared what little they had without hesitation. My tutors taught me that humans are a young species, Lyra told one day. They said you barely understand the basics of civilization, that your people are selfish and violent and will destroy themselves within a few centuries. Sounds like your tutors never met actual humans, replied with a grin. I am beginning to think they never met anyone at all. Something was changing inside Lyra, something she could not stop even if she wanted to. The cold shell she had built around herself was cracking. Every smile from a villager, every meal shared, every sunset watched from his back, these small things were rewriting everything she thought she knew. One night she woke to the sound of hushed voices. Through her door, which had been left slightly open, she could see standing by the window. The older woman was holding something small and glowing, speaking into it quietly. I understand, said, her voice harder than Lyra had ever heard it. Keep me informed, and tell them if they come here they answer to me. She closed the device and stood in silence for a long moment. Then she turned, and her eyes met Lyra's through the crack in the door. Neither of them moved. Neither spoke. finally walked away into the shadows. Lyra lay awake for hours after that, her mind spinning with questions. Who was really? What was that device? Who was she talking to? But when morning came and appeared with his usual smile, asking if she wanted to see the farmer's new baby goats, Lyra pushed her questions aside. Whatever secrets this family held, they had shown her nothing but kindness. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps she should stop looking for reasons to distrust and simply let herself be grateful. She wrapped her arms around neck, felt him lift her easily, and let him carry her into another day of sunshine and simple wonders. She did not know that far above them, beyond the clouds and the atmosphere, ships were already gathering. She did not know that her past was racing toward her faster than light. She only knew that for the first time in her life, she felt something close to peace. And she was terrified of losing it. The day the sky turned dark, Lyra was laughing for the first time in years. Had just told her a ridiculous story about falling into the river as a child while trying to catch a fish with his bare hands. His mother had to pull him out, soaking wet and covered in mud, with no fish and no dignity remaining. The memory made him blush and made Lyra laugh until her stomach hurt. Then the shadows fell. 3 massive shapes blocked the sun, descending through the clouds like mountains given the power to fly. They were warships, their hulls gleaming silver and purple, their weapons visible even from the ground. The symbol on their sides was one Lyra knew all too well: the imperial crest of the High Council. Her laughter died instantly. Her face went pale as the blood drained from it. Felt her grip tighten on his shoulders, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "Lyra, what is wrong?" "They found me," she whispered. "They finally found me." Before could ask more questions, smaller vessels began dropping from the warships. Landing craft filled with soldiers touched down in the wheat fields, crushing the crops beneath their weight. Within minutes, hundreds of troops surrounded the village, their weapons drawn and ready. A voice boomed from speakers mounted on the ships, speaking in the common galactic tongue that everyone understood. "Attention, human settlement. We are here for the criminal known as Lyra of House. Surrender her immediately and no harm will come to you. Resist, and you will face the full consequences of defying the Imperium." Stood frozen, his mind trying to process what was happening. Criminal? Lyra was a criminal. He looked at the girl on his back, saw the fear and shame mixing in her purple eyes. "I should have told you," Lyra said, her voice breaking. "I ran away. My father arranged a marriage for me to a war prince named General Torin. He is cruel and violent and has killed 3 of his previous wives when they displeased him. I could not face that fate, so I stole an escape pod and fled." "That does not make you a criminal," said firmly. "In the eyes of my people, refusing a political marriage is treason. My family's honor depends on this union. If I do not return, my father loses everything." Lyra's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But I cannot go back. I would rather die than belong to that monster." The village was in chaos around them. Soldiers marched through the streets, kicking down doors, searching every building. Families huddled together in fear. Children cried while their parents tried to calm them. The colonial governor arrived in a fancy transport, a fat man in expensive clothes who trembled visibly as he addressed the villagers. He announced that the alien girl must be found and surrendered. Anyone who helped hide her would be punished severely. The Imperium was not an enemy this small planet could afford to make. Made his decision without hesitation. He carried Lyra into the forest, moving quickly through paths he had known since childhood. Behind them, the sounds of searching soldiers grew distant. Ahead lay the caves where he had played as a boy, a network of tunnels that no off knew existed. "What are you doing?" Lyra demanded. "You heard them. If you help me, they will hurt you. They will hurt your village, your mother." "My mother can take care of herself," replied, though he felt worry twist in his chest. "And I am not handing you over to people who want to give you to a man who kills his wives." You do not understand. The Imperium does not forgive. They do not forget. They will hunt you forever. Found the cave entrance hidden behind a waterfall and carried her inside. The darkness swallowed them, cool and damp and smelling of stone. He had brought emergency supplies here years ago for childhood adventures. Now those supplies might save their lives. Then I guess we better not get caught, he said. For 3 days, they hid in the caves while they searched the forest. Knew these tunnels like he knew his own heartbeat. He led them through passages too narrow for armored soldiers, across underground streams, past chambers where glowing fungi provided faint light. He carried Lyra through all of it. His arms screamed in pain. His legs felt like they might collapse at any moment. But he did not stop, did not complain, did not even slow down. On the second night, huddled in a small chamber while patrols passed nearby, Lyra finally broke down. "You are going to die for me," she whispered, tears streaming down her lavender cheeks. "You are going to die for someone you barely know, someone whose people look down on yours, someone who does not deserve this sacrifice." Sat beside her, his body exhausted but his eyes still bright with determination. "Everyone deserves a choice about their own life," he said simply. "You did not choose that marriage. You should not have to die for refusing it. That is not how the universe works. Then maybe the universe needs to change." On the third night, their luck ran out. A patrol found their trail and followed it to the cave entrance. More soldiers arrived. Within hours, the entire network of tunnels was surrounded. "Come out now," the commander called into the darkness. "There is nowhere left to run. Surrender, the girl and the human will be spared." Stood at the cave mouth, Lyra still on his back. Soldiers surrounded them in a perfect circle, their weapons pointed and ready. The commander stepped forward, his face twisted with contempt. "Foolish human child, did you really think you could defy the Imperium?" Opened his mouth to respond. Then a voice spoke from behind the soldiers. A voice that was quiet and calm, and somehow more terrifying than any weapon. "He is not the one defying your Imperium. I am." The soldiers turned. The commander's eyes went wide. Walked toward them through the darkness, still wearing her simple clinic clothes, her graying hair tied back in its usual practical style. But something had changed about her. The way she moved was different. The way she held herself was different. She looked like someone who had commanded armies. Someone who had destroyed fleets. Someone the galaxy had learned to fear. "You cannot be here," the commander stammered. "You are supposed to be dead." Smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." The soldiers froze like statues. Their weapons remained raised, but not a single one fired. The commander took an involuntary step backward, his superior attitude crumbling into pure shock. "Admiral," he breathed the name like it was a curse. "The Iron Orchid." Stared at his mother. The words made no sense to him. Admiral. His mother ran a tiny clinic on a farming planet. She made herbal medicine and treated children with fevers. She was the gentlest person he had ever known. But the soldiers looking at her saw something else entirely. Reached beneath her shirt and pulled out a pendant she had kept hidden for 17 years. It was black metal shaped like a sun, circled by 7 small stars. The symbol of the United Human Admiralty. The symbol worn only by the Supreme Commander of all human military forces. "My name is Admiral," she announced, her voice carrying to every soldier present. "I commanded the human defense fleet for 23 years. I broke the armada at. I burned the slave markets of Orion Station. I wrote the frontier accords that your own Imperium signed." She stepped closer to the commander, and he actually flinched. "You are in human colonial space. You have surrounded a human settlement with armed troops. You have threatened human citizens and hunted a refugee seeking asylum. Tell me, Commander, did your superiors not teach you what happens when the Imperium threatens humanity?" The commander tried to recover his composure. "You have no authority here anymore. You retired. You disappeared. The Admiralty has new leadership now." "Does it?" Pulled a small communicator from her pocket and pressed a button. "This is Iron Orchid to all ships. Execute plan homecoming." For a long moment, nothing happened. The commander began to smile, thinking her bluff had failed. Then the sky split open. 18 human warships dropped out of hyperspace directly above the planet. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons, their hulls painted in the bold colors of the human defense fleet. They moved into position around the 3 ships with perfect precision, cutting off any escape route. Communications channels crackled to life. Voices began reporting in, one after another. "Battleship Defiance standing by, Admiral." "Carrier Redemption awaiting orders." "Destroyer Wing 7 locked on targets." "This is Commodore Han of the cruiser Unstoppable. It has been too long, Admiral. Just say the word." The commander's face went gray. 3 ships against 18. His weapons against the fleet that had humbled a dozen species. There was no scenario in which this ended well for him. Turned back to him with cold eyes. "I may have retired, Commander, but I never lost the loyalty of those I served with. One call and they came. That is what you should have learned about humans. We do not forget our own. We do not abandon those who fought beside us." She gestured toward and Lyra. "Now I am going to give you one chance. Take your soldiers, take your ships, leave this system and never return. Tell your Imperium that this girl is under human protection. Tell them the Iron Orchid sends her regards." "The High Council will not accept this," the commander protested weakly. "The girl belongs to us. There are treaties, protocols." "The girl requested asylum. Human law grants her protection. As for your treaties and protocols, you voided them the moment you brought warships into our space without permission." Smiled again, that cold and terrible smile. "I could destroy your fleet right now, and your own laws would support my actions. Is that what you want? Should I show your Imperium what happens when they test human patience?" The commander looked at the sky, where the human warships waited in perfect formation. He looked at his soldiers, who were beginning to lower their weapons. He looked at, who stood calm and patient like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Because she had. "We will withdraw," he said finally, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "But this is not over. The High Council will hear of this insult." "I am counting on it," replied. "Go home and tell your masters that humanity protects those who ask for our help. Tell them we do not care about their power or their history or their pride. Tell them that if they want war with the Iron Orchid, they know where to find me." The soldiers retreated. Their landing craft lifted off, returning to the warships above. Within an hour, all 3 vessels had powered up their engines and jumped into hyperspace, fleeing the system at maximum speed. Only then did the human fleet break formation. Most ships jumped away, returning to whatever duties they had abandoned to answer's call. A few remained, their commanders sending messages of congratulation and offers of continued support. When it was over, when the sky was clear and the village was safe, finally found his voice. "Mother," he said, the word feeling strange in his mouth, "who are you?" Looked at her son with an expression he had never seen before. It was pride mixed with sadness, love mixed with regret. "I am exactly who I have always been," she said softly, "just more than I showed you." They returned to the village together, still carrying Lyra, walking beside them. The villagers watched in silence, their faces showing a mixture of fear and awe. They had always known as the gentle healer who asked for nothing and gave everything. Now they knew she was also a legend, a warrior, a woman who had shaped the course of galactic history. That night, after Lyra was settled safely in bed, sat with his mother on the porch of their small house. The stars above seemed different now, less like distant lights and more like places where battles had been fought, where his mother had commanded fleets. "Why did you hide this from me?" he asked. Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with years of hidden pain. "Because I wanted you to be different from me. I spent my whole life learning to destroy things. I learned to command ships that killed thousands. I learned to make decisions that ended worlds." She looked at her hands, hands that had healed so many in this village. "I wanted you to learn something else. I wanted you to learn to help people, to carry them when they could not walk, to be kind without asking what you would gain from it." She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And you did. You became everything I hoped you would be. You found a broken girl in the forest, and instead of turning her in for reward, you hid her. You carried her through caves while an empire hunted you. You risked your life for someone you barely knew, simply because it was right." She reached out and touched his face gently. "That is strength, my son. That is the kind of strength that makes humanity special. Not our weapons, not our ships, our stubborn, irrational refusal to abandon those who need us." Did not know what to say. His whole world had changed in a single day. The mother he thought he knew was a stranger in so many ways. But when he looked at her now, he still saw the woman who had taught him to bandage wounds. The woman who had shown him which herbs cured fever. The woman who had loved him every single day of his life. Admiral or not, legend or not, she was still his mother. "I think," he said slowly, "I need some time to understand all of this." Nodded, accepting his answer without argument. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas playing out beneath them. But somewhere in that vast darkness, word was spreading. The Iron Orchid had returned, and she had made it very clear what happened to those who threatened humanity. The galaxy would remember this night for a long time. 1 month after the fleet retreated, the village of Seven had returned to something like normal. Farmers tended their fields. Children played in the streets. The wheat grew tall and golden under the warm sun. But some things had changed forever. Lyra could walk now. Proper medical supplies had arrived on one of the human ships and had used them to finish healing the damage to her legs. The first steps were painful, hesitant, like learning to walk all over again. But each day she grew stronger. She chose to stay. The Imperium had sent formal protests through diplomatic channels. They demanded the return of their citizen. They threatened economic sanctions. They hinted at consequences that would come in time. Had responded with a single message, delivered through official human channels. Lyra had requested asylum. Human law granted it. Any attempt to retrieve her by force would be considered an act of war. The Imperium backed down. They had no desire to test the Iron Orchid again. Lyra filed the paperwork to renounce her citizenship to the Imperium. It was a complicated process involving dozens of forms and several interviews. When it was finally complete, she was officially a refugee under human protection, free to live wherever she chose. She chose this small village on a farming planet at the edge of human space. "Are you sure?" asked when she told him. "You could go anywhere. Human space has cities with millions of people. There are universities, space stations, entire worlds more exciting than this place." Lyra smiled, and it was a real smile now, one that reached her purple eyes. "I spent my whole life in exciting places, palaces of crystal, ships that crossed between stars, parties where the guests wore more wealth than this entire village produces in a year." She looked out at the wheat fields swaying in the afternoon breeze. "I was miserable, I was lonely, I was trapped." She turned back to him. "Here I am free. Here I have learned what really matters. That is worth more than all the palaces in the galaxy." They walked together toward the hill where they had watched so many sunsets. Lyra's steps were still careful, but she no longer needed to be carried. She moved on her own strength now. When they reached the top, they sat in the grass and looked out over the village below. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. I want to learn to be like your people, Lyra said quietly. I want to learn to help others without expecting anything in return. I want to learn to carry people when they cannot walk. Pulled up a blade of grass and chewed on it thoughtfully. That is not something you learn, not really. It is something you decide. You just decide that someone else's struggle is worth sharing, that their weight is worth carrying. Is it really that simple? Simple does not mean easy, but yes, it is that simple. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the colors shift across the sky. Finally, Lyra spoke again. Your mother, the Admiral, she is not what I expected. Laughed softly. She is not what anyone expected, including me. Has it been strange, learning who she really is? He considered the question carefully. Since that night when everything changed, he and his mother had talked many times. She had told him about her past, about the battles she had fought, about the enemies she had defeated. She had explained why she retired, why she hid her identity, why she chose this simple life on a farming planet. She wanted to give him a childhood free from the weight of her reputation. She wanted him to grow up believing that helping people was more important than commanding them. She wanted him to learn kindness instead of warfare. And when he asked if she regretted it, if she wished she had raised him to be a soldier like her, she had shaken her head firmly. You faced down an empire with nothing but compassion and stubbornness, she had said. You protected someone who needed help at the risk of your own life. That took more courage than any battle I ever fought. I could not be prouder if you had commanded 1,000 ships. Now, sitting on the hill with Lyra, found his answer. It was strange at first, he admitted. Finding out my mother was this famous warrior who shaped history. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was always the same person. She just showed me the part of herself she wanted me to learn from. The healer instead of the warrior. Both are part of who she is. Both are part of who humans are. He gestured toward the village below. We can build fleets that terrify empires. We can also build communities that share everything they have. We can fight wars that shake the galaxy. We can also carry injured strangers through forests without asking for anything in return. Lyra nodded slowly. My people see contradiction in that. Weakness and strength cannot exist together in our philosophy. You are one or the other. Maybe that is why you have empires that force people into marriages they do not want. His voice was gentle, not accusatory. When you see kindness as weakness, you crush it wherever you find it. You lose something important. We lose the ability to carry each other. Exactly. The sun touched the horizon, and for a moment the entire world seemed to glow with golden light. Lyra reached out and took his hand. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact with him. Thank you, she said, for carrying me when I could not walk, for showing me what your people are capable of, for changing everything I thought I knew about the universe. Squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for letting me help, for trusting a stranger, for staying. Below them, a figure emerged from the village and began walking toward the hill, moved with the easy grace of someone who had lived 2 lives and found peace in both of them. She carried a basket with food for dinner, just a mother bringing a meal to her children. But she was also Admiral, the Iron Orchid, the woman who had made empires tremble and then walked away to plant gardens. She climbed the hill and sat beside them, handing out sandwiches wrapped in cloth. Beautiful sunset, she observed. The best yet, agreed. The 3 of them ate together in comfortable silence, watching the day end and the stars begin to appear. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, the Imperium was learning to fear humanity again. Somewhere, other empires were updating their assessments of human capability. Somewhere, beings who had never met a human were hearing stories of the Iron Orchid and her son who carried alien girls through caves. But here, on this small hill on a small planet, none of that mattered. Here, there was only food and sunset and the sound of wind through the wheat fields. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. He let her rest there without comment, watched them both with a small smile on her face. "I think," Lyra said softly, "that I finally understand what makes humanity terrifying." O raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" "You carry each other, through wars and peace, through triumph and disaster, through caves while empires hunt you. You never stop reaching out your hand to lift someone up." She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the last sunlight on her face. "In a galaxy full of species that climb over each other to reach the top, you are the ones who climb together. That is not weakness. That is the most frightening strength of all." Smiled at his mother, smiled back. Neither of them needed to say anything. The stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with ancient light. And three people who had found each other against all odds sat together on a hill, watching the universe turn. They were not an admiral and a refugee and a farm boy anymore. They were family. And in a galaxy full of empires built on fear and power, that was perhaps the most revolutionary thing of all.